My name is Astrid Alvarez, and today I will be sharing with you my extension and application project over close reading of complex texts. Literacy and reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is an essential component of literacy, and good readers are strategic. There are often a lot of reading strategies that we must teach our students in order for them to uncover meaning and gain new or deeper knowledge, especially beginning in the fourth grade, where the focus shifts from learning to read to reading to learn. The Common Core expects students to begin reading complex texts at this point and apply what they have read to make inferences, apply previous held knowledge, and evaluate what was read. Text complexity. So text complexity is kind of an interesting topic because it is not a cut and dry standard. Beginning in the fourth grade, the CCSS expects that students read complex texts. However, there are different factors that contribute to what makes a text more complex. Three specifically: there's the quantitative, qualitative, and read task components. For the quantitative consideration, there are things such as Lexile levels, and these are used generally just to get a measure of the readability of a vocabulary of a text, vocabulary complexity. Unfortunately, Lexile levels do not give a complete view of what makes a text complex. Some texts are very complex, even though their Lexile levels are lower than another text that could have a higher Lexile level, and yet the ability to understand the text is not necessarily at a higher level. So that's why we look at qualitative and read task components. Qualitative measures the levels of meaning required to read a text, so how much background knowledge a student needs in order to be successful at comprehending the text on a meaningful level. Then we have the read task component, which is where what the student's motivation and prior knowledge is necessary to make meaning of the text, but also what are they reading the text for. Close reading is a strategy that can be used when reading challenging text, specifically by taking a deeper look at a short excerpt. And you would read this excerpt multiple times, looking at it through different lenses and examining different things every single time. You could look at vocabulary, text structure, character development, tone, and various other things. It does require teachers to provide scaffolding and create opportunities for think alouds and, as I said, rereading of the text in order to help our students become focused on finding text-based support for their answers. So a big focus is finding text-based answers to everything. So my focus and question for this project was, how can we use complex texts and close reading to increase reading comprehension? Now, it does seem rather straightforward. Obviously, if you have a complex text, you are more likely to get something out of it. However, it is hard for students at any level to read these types of texts without any kind of focus. So therefore, this is where the close reading comes into play. The idea of reading complex text in elementary schools is daunting, but close reading moves students away from reading for a general understanding of the material to developing deeper into the text to determine items such as author's purpose, inferences, opinions, and arguments. And these are very high-level comprehension skills. Now, in order to ensure that teachers are armed with the tools and resources to implement this type of strategy, they need to be trained not just on close reading the strategies, but also on choosing an appropriately challenging text. And therefore, I decided to focus more on how to develop a professional development or a series of professional developments in order to support teachers. So the professional development objectives. The purpose of this workshop is to understand how close reading complex texts can help raise reading comprehension in 4th through 6th grade classrooms. Our outcomes are to understand text complexity and the effectiveness of close reading, to identify a complex text suitable for students' reading levels, to review and apply close reading strategies to a text, to plan collaboratively with grade level teams in order to implement close reading strategies in the classroom. The first session would just be about identifying text readability. Now, this potentially is going to be a pretty long session, so it could be divided into another session if necessary. So we would overview of the workshop objectives and expected outcomes first, and then we would talk about how to choose complex texts, and we would look at different readability formulas, specifically Lexile levels and the Frye graph. And then after identifying readability, the teachers will have to understand the nuances of text complexity and look at qualitative and reader task components. For session 2, this is where we would actually choose a complex text. In other words, vetting texts. And this is an essential skill for teachers because, especially in my personal experience, it is very hard to vet the things that our students are going to read. And sometimes we take for granted that the teachers that are coming in actually know how to do this. So we kind of tend to gloss over how to vet a text. So in grade level teams, they're going to choose a book that is written at an appropriate level according to one of the Lexile levels. So you're going to select a text according to Lexile levels, identify the levels of meaning needed for students to comprehend this text, and determine if they are appropriate for the grade level that they teach. And they're going to determine a reading task that is both thematically linked to the text and is appropriate for their students. Session 3 is finally where we get into the close reading of complex texts, and specifically in grades 4 through 6. So they will review close reading strategies, and I have listed some of them. So you have to select a complex, appropriate anchor text, activate prior knowledge, and set a purpose for reading. This could be done through a quick write, where you give students a prompt that is thematically linked. This could be through pre-reading questions, or it could be through making predictions based on, pictures or things like that associated with the text. Then during reading, students are expected to read and reread the texts and slow down to look for specific things. So the first read is generally just for understanding, and you could also go through and look at vocabulary and things like that. And then each time they read, they're looking for a deeper level of meaning so that the comprehension skills are scaffolded, and eventually, hopefully, they can start to do these things automatically on their own. And then you would challenge students with high-level text-specific questions. So you would have them find text evidence, which is one of the skills that they need at this level. And then finally, they would write about their reading to cement learning as a final check for understanding. So teachers would review all of these skills, and then they would apply those strategies to previously selected texts, the ones that they selected in session 2. Session 4, this is my favorite part of any professional development. I feel like we don't get enough time to actually apply and plan for how we will be using these strategies. So a lot of times what happens is that we'll go back to our classrooms and we'll forget nuances, and we'll forget things that are important to us. So we would review instructional strategies and methods one more time, and then we would have them, the teachers, apply their newly acquired knowledge into their own classroom curriculum. And then I have a little evaluation as well. So I found that in order to prepare teachers to use these strategies, that the PD method, that providing them with actual hands-on training, was probably the best method. So I really enjoyed breaking down how I would like to see this taught to me, and understanding that a more hands-on approach rather than simply creating a curriculum would be more beneficial. Thank you very much.